Hello everyone, good morning. Nice to have all of your company. Thank you very much. Wherever you are here now. We are not very far from each other when we are all connected in this way. Thank you very much everyone. This morning, as usual, Sunday morning, we will do the refuge and the prayers to start up our engine of motivation and devotion and mindfulness. And then we will do the half an hour meditation in 3 slots of 10 minutes, which everybody should teach themselves how to sit still and develop mindful in staying fully present in the techniques of calm abiding meditation that you know best. So, and this will be followed by today a special talk on the story of King Ajatashatru, who features very important in life of the Buddha and Buddhist history in India. So thank you everyone. Join your hands at the heart and we do the refuge and generation of bodhicitta. Oyenda Buddha Dhamma Sangha Aitere Vyete Elhadama Vavechu Ajevendala Ashare Vadavadrubi Endabu Tadama Sangha Aitere Vyete Eladama Bhavachu Ajevendala Ashare Vadavadrubi Endabu Tadama Sangha Aitere Vyete Eladama Bhavachu Ajevendala Ashare Vadavadrubi. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they know a power from happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion, those near and far. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they know a power from happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion, those near and far. May all beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they never part from the happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to the near and far. So now we will do the meditation, everyone. Try to observe the 4S, the stillness of your posture, as well as your whole attention, and the sincere motivation with the bodhicitta motivation, not just doing for now or me or this life, but try to do for the benefit of all beings, benefit of your future ways of thinking, and benefit of the good mind. And so had a very holistic and sincere motivation, and then observe the third S, the very serene attention. Your attention should be very focused one pointedly on the techniques such as the posture scanning, qualified, forward counting, super qualified round, reverse counting. Each of the technique you got to keep your mind very sharp and vivid and clear, and do all of the above very simple, and don't make it too complicated. If you are distracted, take a little mini break, and nothing's going to be bad. Just take it easy, and then resume your posture and attention. So stay very disciplined and not let the mind become scattered and unengaged, both physically and attentively, to one pointedly do this. So I will use the gong to time our 3 slots meditation in 3 lots of 10 minutes, which is really good to have all of your company. Thank you all. So welcome everyone. This morning's talk is related to the history of ancient India, related to the, of course, life of the Buddha. So when we talk about the story of the king Ajatashatru, we're talking about 400 BC. So this is like 600 years before the Emperor Ashoka, and also around 600 years before Nagarjuna and all of that. So we're taking you a little bit really way before Christ. But nevertheless, because Buddha was born in early 500 BC, so therefore any history related with the life of Buddha is, we're talking about 500 before Christ. Quite a lot of history of ancient India is very sketchy, but the story around the life and work and activities of King Bimbisara and Ajatasattu are quite well kept. So the purpose of this sharing this story of Ajatasattu is a kind of a complex relationship between father and son, or father and mother and son, or mother and daughter, or there's a lots of people do not know in their own lives how on earth did I have this as my child, or how on earth but I had to have a mother like this, or mother thinks that why do I have to have a child like this, and or some of them say, oh, I'm so delighted to have a child like this, how did I earn this? People have no idea what past life karma both parent and the children have created, that they have to have this relationship either going into good to very good, or very good and then becoming very bad, and to the bad to the extent of actually father being killed by the son. So in this case, the story of King Bimbisara and Ajatasattu is this nature. So therefore, the story of the King Ajatasattu is only an example, but idea is so that every one of us who is interested in karma and reincarnation, which some people have, however smart and intelligent they are, they cannot accept these kind of Buddhist beliefs. I don't know that people with Buddhism without belief could be regarded as a Buddhist at all. So quite a lot of people are also struggling whether they had a past life, or whether there is a future lives. And often Buddha taught during his ministry the teaching of law of reincarnation, talking about who was who in one's life in the past, what were they, what they did to each other, and what caused them to be having this present life relationship, and how the nature of their relationship have to end up like this. He often explained them to elucidate that what past life karma and unfinished relationship in the past life between the two have to have go and continue into this life as a father and son, and so on and so forth. So therefore, I like you all as a really ardent Buddhist students. I don't think any of you I know from the audience are Buddhists without beliefs. You are almost like a die-hard Buddhist. You definitely believe in the triple gem. You have faith in the triple gem, and you have stick around. As I know, as some of you, as many as 20 over years in the Dharma, some maybe more. So we cannot afford to join those mob. Think Buddhism has no beliefs, and therefore dismiss the law of rebirth and karma. Last night I was doing Pranjaparamita empowerment. We had over 1,000 audience. I'm sure among them there will be many who would not be really Buddhist with beliefs, but maybe some of them are cultural beliefs. Uh, um, but nevertheless, they're all interested in empowerment, You wouldn't believe how many people are interested in empowerment and how much fewer are interested in teachings. And maybe even fewer are interested in stories, the history. So thank you for sticking around to hear the history. Today is a history lesson. Anyway, going back to the King Ajatashatru. Firstly, the name Ajata. Ajata meaning before birth. Shatru means enemy. So his name is enemy before birth, So that means the unborn prince, Ajatashatru, was already an enemy to the father in his past life. So he came back. He was reborn to take revenge. So Ajatashatru means unborn enemy. And the unborn means before birth. Buddha already knew that the son of the king Bimbisara is actually the past life enemy of Bimbisara, who will slain his very father. So anyway, Ajatashatru was a very important king to the Haryanka dynasty, who came to throne in Magadha kingdom by deposing and executing his father Bimbisara. The Haryanka dynasty, which spanned from 545 BC to about 413, came into prominence during the rule of his father, Bimbisara. Bimbisara was contemporary of Shakyamuni Buddha's father, Shuddhodana, who extended his kingdom through conquest and marriage alliances. In those days, India was not one country. India had many small principalities and dynasties. Everyone is ruled small, countless kingdoms. And so marriage alliance were very important cause to make the two states become big or work together or sometimes get into war. Anyway, so King Bimbisara became very powerful. It was the first important Magadhan dynasty. Magadha is the present-day Bihar. If you look at the Bihar, is one of the largest Indian states today. And in those days, the place where Bodh Gaya is called Magadha. So Magadha means the central kingdom. And so Magadha dynasty, whose historicity can be ascertained through many very verifiable facts. Before the Haryanka kingdom, a mythical dynasty by the name of Brihadrita is often talked about, but does not have any archaeological or contemporary literary evidence to back up their claim. However, the Magadha kingdom started its expansion from the time of King Bimbisara, but Ajatashatru, that's one who slain his father, annexed several important and powerful neighboring kingdoms like ancient kingdom of Anga. Ancient kingdom of Anga in the east is present-day Bengal. That's how the words get corrupted. Anga become Banga, Banga become Bengal. So Ajatashatru annexed several important powerful kingdoms, such as Koshala and Anga. Kashi is the Varanasi side, and Vriji. Vriji is the present-day Vaishali area, also part of present-day what we call the Bihar. Roughly covered by the whole present-day Bihar, and then Uttar Pradesh and West Bengal, and also Odisha. and sometimes even extending as far as present-day Bangladesh and even the southern parts of Nepal. So King Ajatashatru became very powerful and aggressive to reach great heights. But remember, King Ajatashatru was the beloved prince of Father Bimbisara. Father Bimbisara came from a place called Girivraja, which is ancient name for Rajgriha. And he made 3 important marriage alliances during his time, out of which Princess Chelana of Lichavi Kingdom and the daughter of King Chetaka was the mother of Ajatashatru. So the mother of Ajatashatru was a daughter of King Chetaka. So anyway, King Ajatashatru, also known as Kunika before another name, grew up in Rajgriha under his able guidance and care and love of his father and mother. He was trained in ancient Indian warfare. In those days, all the kings and his prince were straight away trained in military warfare. Archery, fencing, horse riding, as well as knowledge of the scriptures, religious traditions, and he received all the princely education that warranted to successfully succeed his father. There are several legends associated with the birth of Ajatashatru, both in the Jain and Buddhist literature. His name in the local language means enemy before birth. Ajata, Jata means born, A means not born, Shatru means enemy. And it said that Ajatashatru's mother had very bad dreams and negative premonitions during her pregnancy, and which indicated that the child born would be evil and harmful to his parents. So she had a very difficult pregnancy, and when she consulted the astrologers and soothsayers, they said, "Oh gosh, you are pregnant to a child who will turn his back to you and your husband." So this was already told. This is very, very interesting story. That's why the story of Ajatashatru is important to understand what big surprise and shock changes that happen in people's everyday family life relationships. Life relationship. Relationships. So when Ajatashatru as a prince then grew up, he was taken to the war against Anga by Bimbisara. Anga means Bengal. So when the father was warring with Bengal, he brought his prince together with him. When the Anga kingdom, that is the present day West Bengal and Bangladesh and Odisha, was annexed to Magadha kingdom, with their capital at Champa, it had access to trade routes, coastal access like modern day Calcutta for overseas commerce. Bimbisara understood its importance, so he attacked and defeated Anga forces in battle. After the battle of Anga was won, Ajatashatru was installed as governor. His father loved his son so much. As soon as he succeeded to annex the Bengal under his domain, he installed his son Ajatashatru as the governor. The Anga therefore soon proved to be the most flourishing region for the empire, as its overseas trade made the kingdom rich and its army very powerful. Bimbisara has always considered Ajatashatru to be his ideal heir, and hence he had put him in the charge of the most important and prosperous province that he has recently annexed. However, Ajatashatru's ambition soon got the better of him, and he was not satisfied just with the control of that one region that recently became under their control. according to the Buddhist sources, Ajatashatru was continually ill-advised by Devadatta. The reason why Ajatashatru became so anti-Buddha was because he was under the ill influence of Devadatta. Devadatta is Buddha's cousin and who was jealous of the Buddha's enlightenment and various qualities. And so the Devadatta was Buddha's cousin who was very jealous. So he instigated Ajatashatru to become very harmful. Anyway, Bimbisara by then had probably turned as a follower of the Buddha himself. Because when the Buddha, before enlightenment, after Shakyamuni Buddha, as a Prince Siddhartha has left his home, he wandered around. Before he made his decision to do the 6-year retreat, he actually went to the region of Magadha. At that time, Bimbisara already met him. That's before he was enlightened. Yeah. Anyway, so connection between Bimbisara and Prince Siddhartha happened quite early because Bimbisara knew that Shuddhodana's prince has left home and become a mendicant. Anyway, so Bimbisara, however, had a strong growing influence on him by the Buddha as well as jealous Devadatta. And so Devadatta's friend, Ajatashatru, coveted the position as Devadatta coveted the position of the Buddha. So therefore Ajatashatru was coveting his father's role and convinced that he will usurp the throne through a coup. Ajatashatru was tricked by all this, and he was soon deposed and later executed his own father by imprisoning him. So we'll come to the details of how he imprisoned and killed his father a little later. Though a legend also says Bimbisara took his own life after he was being imprisoned, that is actually isn't the case. Whatever the case, Ajatashatru was responsible for his father's death, which gave him the chance to ascend to the throne of Magadha. So it's very important for us to know these stories, very carefully, how this relationship turns out. Ajatashatru's cruelty brought him to the throne, but his ambition did not end there. He wanted a greater kingdom for himself. In the meantime, he shocked at the patricide committed by Bimbisara's own son, one of his wives. The prince from the kingdom of the Kosala died too out of grief and followed her husband by committing suicide. Because of the Ajatashatru's terrible, heinous crimes of committing patricide and other relatives in his family, this has many side effects. Because the mother was the sister of King Prasenajit, ruler of kingdom of Kosala, which is the modern day Shravasti, who had gifted the flourishing city of Kashi is Varanasi, to Bimbisara as a dowry. After losing both his sister and brother-in-law, an ally, Prasenajit was enraged and took Kashi back. This gave Ajatashatru's reason to attack Kosala, which roughly correspond to some of the modern-day entire Uttar Pradesh. The battle between the Ajatashatru, who is from Magadha, and Prasenajit from the Shravasti, witnessed a seesaw of fortunes for both. Once, when Ajatashatru was defeated and caught without guard, his life was spared by older Prasenajit, who soon forgave him and also returned the city of Kashi to him. However, Prasenajit was enraged and took Kashi back. This gave Ajatashatru reason to attack Kosala again, which roughly corresponds to some part of the modern Uttar Pradesh become cause of their fight. Once, when Ajatashatru was defeated and caught without guard, his life was spared. Prasenajit was soon disposed by his own son. So all these ancient king stories, it is the son who is always usurping the father and killing the father. So just as Bimbisara was killed by Prasenajit, by Ajatashatru, the Prasenajit was soon deposed by his son, and Ajatashatru returned to attack the kingdom of Kosala with his full might. Now that the king Prasenajit was gone, he soon annexed Kosala with all the resources. So this is how Ajatashatru became very, very powerful. Emboldened by his conquest and also replenished by the continuous supply of armaments from the riches of the deposits of iron ores of his kingdom and elephants and woods from the nearby jungles, Ajatashatru next turned his attention to the powerful confederation of the Vrijis and their capital as Vaishali. This is the southern part of the modern Bihar. Ajatashatru's mother belonged to Lichavi king clan and of the Vriji confederation, but this did not stop him from attacking this kingdom. His ambition was insatiable. So at that time, Vriji kingdom, the areas of the northern Bihar and some parts of southern Nepal, was entity ruled by the confederation of the important clans of the town with the clan heads at the helm. The Vrijis were united and they possessed a mighty and powerful army. Despite his military might and unlimited supplies, Ajatashatru could not overpower the Vriji confederation after several attempts, and so he turned to Gal. He understood that while united, the Vrijis could never be defeated and looked for ways to break that unity. Soon he devised a plan and planned one of his most trusted ministers, probably by the name of Vasakara, amidst them, probably in disguise or somebody who wanted to defect. After gaining their trust and settling down there, Vasakara slowly and gradually manipulated his way and planted the seed of dissension among the Vrijis. Their unity was gradually broken after the wily minister continuously ill-fed one another with false stories. This is what people do, They tell bad stories, false stories, and many people become completely poisoned by it. So that's mainly the intention of people telling the story, out of jealousy, out of ill will, out of discontentment, and many people fall for it. When they started squabbling among themselves, Ajatashatru attacked the city of Vaishali. So because Ajatashatru has already planned to cause disunity among the Vrijis, remember? And when this inner squabbling was happening, due to the influence of Vasakara's kind of a scheme, then that gave Ajatashatru an opportunity to attack the city of Vaishali with all his might. He also improvised the technique of his attack, this time by introducing two new and unique war machines. One was a catapult, which could throw huge stones from its arms amongst the enemy ranks, and another chariot-like machine with huge maces or swords attached to it could cut and mow down the enemy while moving. After a bloody struggle, Ajatashatru defeated the combined forces of Vrijis, which could master at last moment. He annexed the kingdom and added to it his already growing empire. During this time, a legend appears about a famous courtesan of Vaishali called Amrapali, who dated Ajatashatru and later became a disciple of Gautama Buddha. So this lady Amarpala features very much among the Buddha's female disciples. This cannot be corroborated by historical evidence now, but this legend has grown and captured the popular imagination of contemporary times. The battle with the Vrijis took a long time to settle, and it is said that Ajatashatru fought with them for 16 long years. Besides further conquests, Ajatashatru attacked this kingdom for two other reasons. He was angry at the Litvies for not agreeing to share the contents of the jewel mine, which was situated at both kingdoms' border, and which the Litvies had earlier promised. Secondly, two step-brothers of Ajatashatru had taken shelter at Vaishali after deeply offending him by running away with some of his precious possessions. Because these half-brothers of Ajatashatru had reason to do that because Ajatashatru had imprisoned his father, and which made everyone miserable. There was nobody happy. While Ajatashatru was successful conquering kingdoms at home, the home was broken. House was this broken home because all the brothers deserted him. Because he imprisoned his father, he made his mother to suffer. Anyway, buoyed by his success, Ajatashatru then turned his attention to the most powerful kingdom at the time of Indian subcontinent, Avanti. Avanti, with its capital at Ujjain, the modern Madhya Pradesh, and some parts of the neighboring states. The engagement reached stalemate after some time, and the Pradyota dynasty of Avanti would only finally succumb to Magadhan Empire after following the Shishunaga dynasty. So you can see Ajatashatru is an enemy to everyone, not only to his father, who he imprisoned, and his mother, whom he made suffer, and his half-brothers, who all deserted him. All his neighboring kingdoms became his enemies. So he's enemy not only before his birth to his father, but the enemy to all the neighboring kingdoms. Neighboring kingdoms. Anyway, so the Ajatashatru ruled from his capital Rajgriha, just like his father Bimbisara. But during a long Litvi campaign, for additional safety, he also constructed a fortified city near the Ganges River, a place called Pataligrama, which is the modern Patna. Modern city of Patna, the capital of Bihar, was in the old days is called Pataligrama. It is next to the river, which became later the Magadhan capital called Pataliputra. It has now been turned into the modern city of Patna. Rajgriha, for its part, was also fortified by 5 towering hills on its sides, and Ajatashatru made it unbreachable by filling the gaps in the hills with stone walls. You can actually see them even now when you go to Rajgriha and then Vulture's Peak. All the mountains are, between the mountain slopes are all covered with huge big stone walls. He inherited the administrative system set up by his father, an army with his 4 divisions of chariots, infantry, cavalry, and elephant. They also maintained some navy forces after his conquest of Anga, because Anga is the eastern coast of India. That Bay of Bengal, very, very important path. It is probably through that Atisha would have traveled to Indonesia in those during his time. Both Jain religion and Buddhism sources claim the Ajatashatru as their followers. And Ajatashatru at the very beginning was against the Buddha because of influence of Devadatta. Of course, later on, Ajatashatru realized all his wrongdoings, and then some of his minister was able to influence Ajatashatru to visit the Buddha not as objects of enmity and jealousy as he was influenced by Devadatta, but now with the good advice of some ministers, Ajatashatru actually visited and then realized the mistake of imprisoning and executing his father in prison. He also then supported the Sangha, the Buddhist religion, and also he was very, very generous in supporting many other religious traditions and their teachings. And their teachings, yeah. So he was, because in those days the kings always felt that even if you become very successful, you always need to make something useful with your kind of power, and that was always support our religious traditions. Ajatashatru seemed to have followed his father, because his father was already a devotee of Buddha, and he knew that how much he loved the Buddha by his father, and then he realized his mistakes. And Bimbisara, who supported various religions by lowering and withdrawing taxes to the ascetics, due to the rise of Buddhism and Jainism in Magadha. If you go to Rajgriha today, there are more Jain religious pilgrims, Indians, than Indian Buddhist pilgrims. The only pilgrims that Rajgriha attracts as Buddhists are non-Indians. All the Indian pilgrims to Rajgriha are Jains. You wouldn't believe the number of Jain followers of religious Jain tradition is still very strong, and Rajgriha is very, very famous place where they believe Mahavira is contemporary of Buddha, remember? So he was a contemporary Buddha. He had a number of followers. Even today, India probably have more Jain than Buddhists. Buddhists don't even have 2% in India. But if you look among the Indian Hindus, the Jains are in huge numbers today. And this, you wouldn't believe how crowded Rajgriha is as a pilgrimage spot, not because of Buddhists. Buddhists are maybe a fraction. A fraction of people go to Rajgriha to go to Vulture's Peak, and the Jains don't know what the hell it is all. Where the hell are they going to a place called Vulture's Peak? They have many other Jain religious sites within that area. And that shows how Buddhism has dwindled almost to nothing by the overdominance of the Jainism. Due to the rise of the Jainism under the influence of patronage by Ajatashatru, the other Indian Brahmanical religious traditions has taken a back seat. So Brahmins looked down upon Magadha as so the Brahmanical looked down upon Magadha as evidence in their literature. Magadha is almost like not a Hindu, great seats of Hindu, because it has lost to the Jains and a little bit to the Buddhists as well. In the end, what happened is that the story is that Ajatashatru, who who imprisoned his father, saying that father did not sincerely want his son Ajatashatru to come to his throne. Because while having been appointed as the governor in Anga, he thought that was just a minuscule, less important position. He wanted to take the throne. He didn't realize his father has every intent to coronate him to the main capital. But Ajatashatru was so covetous of the power and position of his father that he instead he was misinformed by a jealous minister, and then he fall under that plot, and that made him to be poisoned. Then he usurped his father, and he put his father in the prison. And actually, he wanted his father to die of hunger and all the things. So he didn't let any food. He was just imprisoned in some particular part of the palace, and he only allowed the father to have one window from which he could see vulture's peak, because at least Buddha lived there, and so King Bimbisara could at least see the Buddha from the distance, or at least vulture's peak from the distance. But otherwise, because if you look at Vulture's Peak and Rajgriha, Rajgriha is the town, and Vulture's Peak is like the retreat center. So the retreat center is up on the mountain, and the city of Rajgriha is like in like the city, you know. So father was imprisoned in the palace, and he did not allow anybody visitors. He occasionally allowed his mother to visit, but she was not allowed. He was given no food. He was really tortured. But his wife was so thoughtful. She smuggled food in her Indian sari. You know, the sari is a very good clothing to smuggle few things, you know, particularly in between your legs and somewhere down there. So she smuggled a lot of food when she went to visit, and of course she gave it to her husband, and then later on, and the king, of course, recuperated a little bit because he at least got some food. And then some later on, Ajatashatru discovered that his mother has been smuggling food, and then he said he punished his mother and to restrict her from visiting often, and then the visiting hours or frequency visit to of the queen to his husband was reduced. And then the queen again, this time she was not, because they will check whether she was smuggling any food or not. So she couldn't take any food. In the meantime, the queen, before she went to see her husband, she went to take a shower, and she smeared her whole body in honey and then drawn on the sari and went in. And when she went in, the king licked all the honey and various other nutritious, delicious things. I don't think he was licking her body for any passionate reason, but he was so hungry, and she was so passionate to make him not die of hunger. She made him to lick her body wherever all the honey was covered, and in this way, the Bimbisara didn't die very very early, very as quickly as. And while this was happening, one day, it was heard that King Ajatashatru's wife has given birth to a prince. And so he was so happy that he has now become father himself, you know. And then he couldn't believe how much he, as a king, Ajatashatru, now loved his child, his son. And then he one day asked his mother. He asked his mother, and asked, "Oh, mom, I couldn't believe how much I loved my son. Did I ever receive the love that I'm feeling for my son from my father? It looks like I never did." And then the mother shook her head, and she said, "Oh, Ajatashatru, you surely receive more love from your father than you think you are giving to your son. And he said, no, I can't remember anything. Could you please tell me? She said, look, my love for my son is greatest thing in the whole world. If I receive this kind of love from my father, why it is ending up in this kind of relationship? The mother cried and sobbed. And then she said, when I fell pregnant, when you are in my tummy, when the soothsayers and the astrologers told us that you will be born to harm us both parents, I wanted to abort you. But your father begged me on his knees and not let you abort it. Your father loved you even before you were born and saved you from being aborted. And it said that, and then later on when you were born, you had a terrible kind of boil on your right big thumb, and it was so infected with the pus and blood that it looked so dangerously going to spread all over the body. And your father sucked the pus and blood out of your thumb, and then he cured you from being affected by the infection on your thumb. And then she says, can you show me your thumb? I show you the scar. And then he showed his thumb, and he realized he had a big scar there, and that is from the infection which his father sucked all the blood. She said, your father loved you so much so that the kind of love that you feel for your father, for your son, is nothing, because he's so little and so young and so cute. You know, when you were going to be aborted because the soothsayer told me what you're going to be born like, your father begged and stopped me from aborting, and so he saved you from being aborted. Even after your birth, when you were suffering from such a terrible boil, he sucked all the blood and pus and cured you. Your father has done you unimaginable things. And then Ajatashatru said, oh, then I have made a mistake to make my father in prison. And then he knew his father was still languishing in prison, but he didn't know his father has just died a day ago due to the torture and hunger. And then Ajatashatru, while having this conversation with his mom, told one of his ministers, oh minister, I've made a mistake. Go and rescue my dad. I shouldn't have done this. And then one of the ministers said, your lord, your order to rescue your father is too late. He just died yesterday. And then Ajatashatru was dying of regret and guilt for the rest of his own life. So the story is actually doesn't stop there, It doesn't stop there. The Ajatashatru himself, very loving to his own son Udayin, was only to be executed by his own son later in his life. So not only Bimbisara was killed by his son Ajatashatru, Ajatashatru was himself killed by his own son Udayin. So both father as Bimbisara loved Ajatashatru, Ajatashatru loved his son Udayin, but karmically speaking, both of these sons who are loved killed their fathers and executed. And therefore, the following rulers, this didn't just start there and finish. The following rulers of the Haryanka dynasty under Udaya too committed patricide, one by one. And soon the last Haryanka ruler was deposed by the people and replaced by the Shishunaga dynasty. Until then, the whole Haryanka dynasty was killed by their son, killed by their son, killed by their son. This continued. So people think the power is very important. You wouldn't believe when power is so destructive, even sons would not hesitate to kill the father. Of course, there are a lot of unexplained and difficult to fathom karma that is between the father and son to have some kind of what say Bimbisara did to Ajatashatru in the past life, what Udayan did to his Ajatashatru in former lives. These are all to be explained in the sutras. Buddha explained those things. Why? The Buddha actually knows the past lives of others as well as his own. He remembers his own past lives and his own relationships, and he knows the consequences of each particular deed people performed in the past. Hence, Buddha has taught very skillfully the teaching of law of karma, and without too much emphasizing need to believe in the reincarnation. He was telling, you are deposed by your son because you did this to him in such and such former lives when you were this and when he was this. So these are the teachings Buddha used to elucidate the existence of continuation of a life after life. Of course, Ajatashatru wasn't named Ajatashatru in former life. He was a completely different person, and so on. So when we say reincarnation, is not the reincarnation of same person, but continuity of the mind having to face the karma and consequences of what they did in the past. So what this story of King Ajatashatru and his fate of being himself killed by his own son Udayan, looks like a very karmic result of he himself may imprison his father Bimbisara in jail. So from our point of view, it looks like, oh, he did this to her father, though he was done by his son again. But it's more complex than that. There was many things that they did to each other in the past lives, not as a king and son so much in the previous lives. So Ajatashatru, in spite of this, but before his own death, which is caused by his son, his Ajatashatru's era remained very important in the context of Indian history and empire building, as well as continuation of Buddha Dharma. Remember, when the Shakyamuni Buddha passed away, the first Buddhist council was sponsored by Ajatashatru. So Ajatashatru has become very prominent to become the chief sponsor of the first Buddhist council, led by Mahakashapa and Ananda and Upali the barber. All three of them sat together in Rajgriha, and then they recounted all the sutras. Thus I have heard. All of this happened in Venuvana, the bamboo grove. Bamboo grove is within the Rajgriha. And so the King Ajatashatru has actually set up this bamboo grove for the monastics, for the Buddhas and his disciples whenever they came. So there was a golden era of Ajatashatru. After he has committed all the wrongs, he confessed his misdeeds of having killed his father. He realized how much his father loved him through his mother, only too late to know that after he has caused so much misery to his father. In order to purify his bad karma, then King Ajatashatru, there is actually one sutra called the Confession of Ajatashatru, Ajatashatru, who there's very if you can really if you check on the Google, you probably get that chapter from the sutras, and this is the regret of the Ajatashatru. Buddha, of course, gave teachings. So some of the practices we have today, like how to confess misdeeds, resorting to the four powers, and all of that, came from this kind of very original teaching. People have committed patricide, regicide. This is regicide and patricide, killing a king and father, as well as. So it's a heinous crimes. And Buddha taught the practice of confession. As Nagarjuna says it, even likes of Ajatashatru and Angulimala, who did such a heavy karma in the very presence of the Buddha, were all purified of their misdeeds. So, however bad it looks in the story of the King Ajatashatru's life, but he actually, towards the end of his life, people only learn in hindsight, don't they? Then, towards the end of his life, he completely confessed his misdeeds, his ungratefulness to his father. He never realized that his father loved him as much as he loved his son, when he knew how much love that he feels for his son. So he was so forgetful how much his father loved and gave to him. But yet, until he knew that was the case, he was the most dreadful son, the way he treated his true father as well as to his mother. His mother was a little bit his mother suffered emotionally more than his father. His father was imprisoned. Mother was emotionally tormented. Poor lady. She was caught up between her son and the father. She wants her son to succeed, yet she feels so bad what he is doing to his own father. And she doesn't have a voice, because Ajatashatru might even kill her if she wanted to say oppositionally too much strong. So she quietly smuggled food and smear her body with honey in order to save the life of the King Ajatashatru. Could you believe the voicelessness of the woman at that time? And she was totally disregarded by the son. He wouldn't, until he himself asked how much his father loved him. He wasn't listening any word of her, if she was even allowed to speak. But if the queen were able to intervene early stages and tell her son, don't do this, you dreadful son, how dare you do this? This is what your father did when you were in my womb, how he saved you. If she said that early, way before the father was tortured, she could have saved him that early. So the story reveals the untold stories of how voiceless and suppressed the woman and the mother and queen were those days, if not even sometime these days. Women and mothers always very polite, and they just respect the other, don't want to hurt him, don't want to hurt other. She get caught in the middle. So the queen of King Ajatashatru suffered emotionally worse than her husband and her son. Both her husband, Bimbisara, died in prison. Both her son later on was killed by his own son, Udayan. The queen saw all these miseries, what men do to each other, by the power of greed for power and contempt. They will do anything, including imprisoning the father and making him to starve him to death, and so on. But only people learn very late. Then Ajatashatru later on they realized his misdeeds, his crime, and then took refuge in the Buddha, and then he became the benefactor of the first Buddhist council with 500 arhats all assembled together, and during which thus I have heard, and such, all were gathered there in Bodh Gaya, actually in Bamboo Grove, Venuvana. Bamboo Grove is just, even today it's a very nice. Venuvana is right in the city of Rajgriha itself, and it's quite well kept because Burmese pilgrims, when their very early days of the Buddhist pilgrimage, was able to finance and commit a very nice park and a pond and a reservoir there, and so it looks very, very beautifully kept. Otherwise, it would have been also been completely lost and forgotten amidst all the Hindus and the Jain and Muslim sort of monuments that has sprung up over the years. You wouldn't believe how we are talking about so many thousand years ago. We are talking about 600 BC, so that shows how long a time ago. Nevertheless, if you read any Buddhist stories, it's so clear about the about the nature of the relationship between the Buddha with Bimbisara, and Bimbisara the Ajatashatru with the Devadatta, and then how later on Devadatta himself become proven to be fake and imposter out of his jealousy to the Buddha. Then he could no longer influence Ajatashatru as he did in the past. Then Ajatashatru came to realize how big a misdeeds he has committed against his father and mother, and not to mention all. But he nevertheless became very, very powerful king that united whole that area of India, and then became a very great seat of Buddhism because he became the very patron of the first Buddhist council. So today in history, we see the Ajatashatru became very important. He was a sponsor to numerous ascetics and of the different philosophy, and he always was very inquiring mind of the spiritual traditions and its kind of promises for salvation and redemption of the misdeeds one has committed. And so Ajatashatru had every reason to adhere to the Dharma because of belated realization of all the misdeeds that he has committed under the influence of greed for power and revenge and negativities and violence that he has committed. So it is very clear from the story of Ajatashatru, the dynamics of human relationship in this life is not due to this life. It's causes that everyone has created in the past for each other, against each other, without any kind of awareness what kind of result will it eventuate in the future. So if any one of us have some kind of a very tricky relationship with your immediate parent or parent-in-law or son or daughter-in-law or son or daughter themselves or grandchildren, all of these complicated relationships are not to do with the present life's things. These are some unfinished karma of both persons doing. Now, if we come to know that, and then we become a little bit more careful, and then try to abstain our reaction, our childishness, our bossiness, our kind of attachment, then we might be able to purify those karma from snowballing into a next life. So then at least we might have to suffer the purificatory karma of things in this life, but at least it will stop us becoming so vengeful like Ajatashatru has been to his father and Udayan has to his father, and so on. Because understanding of the life of the Buddha requires to know many, many important figures in the life of Buddha. And Ajatashatru is one of those kings who features very, very important. Mm, there is that very sutra I mentioned, the um, uh, purifying the regret of King Ajatasattu Sutra. And that's a very important sutra because everybody has regret in their life. And most people think if somebody did some terrible thing for them to regret, they think that shouldn't be tolerated. Everybody has committed wrongdoings, and it's never too late to confess and purify like Ajatasattu. Ajatasattu, towards the end of his life, even though his own death could not be prevented from being killed by his son, but nevertheless, his name is never forgettable because he became the chief sponsor of the first Buddhist council, and then he made sure the continuity of the teachings were remembered and recounted, and 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 so on. So I will focus on some of the stories of people in life of Buddha in the next few Sundays. So today's one is here on story of the King Ajatasattu, which means not so much looking at the life of the Ajatasattu so much, but look at life of ourselves and where things are, where things aren't, and don't sort of misinterpret them and react them and be angry and upset and childish, but try to stop the karma from snowballing into next life, so that we actually suffer the consequence, accept them by purification and forgiveness and tolerance, and like King Ajatasattu cleared all his guilt by listening to the Buddha's sermon on how to clear your guilt and regret. And Buddha said that one of the only merit of negative karma is its confessability. You can only confess it when you know it's a non-virtue is non-virtue. And King Ajatasattu was too badly influenced by Devadatta for a long time, and only when his help came later on, he realized how misguided he was. Likewise, quite a lot of the mistakes and wrong turns people have made in their life is also because they listened to some deluded friends, some completely distorted friends. Their anger, their jealousy, their vendetta goes into your mind, and that influences you. So you can see how vulnerable people are, how offendable people are when they don't have refuge in the Triple Gem. So we should be thankful that our refuge in the Dharma protect us from engaging such childish behaviors. And therefore, likes of this story of King Ajatasattu is an elucidator of how to interpret and understand the law of karma, and how much past it might have to the experience we are going through, how much future it will have if these very thoughts, intentions of the present were not dealt kindly and wisely now, how they could turn very sour in the future. So with this we will conclude here. Thank you very much, everyone. So with this we will dedicate the merit. Thank you, everyone. Whatever merit I have, Kareja manju shenyoden asama tabadra de lava follow it ode zamba aja de ge ode mere mede salem body jeda teba that has been born freely with the generation. Thank you, everyone.